Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott kicking it off here. Y'all come down to Texas. That's what he's telling the New York gun owners. The Attorney General joins us this afternoon. And General Abbott, thank you, sir, for your time.
Hey, it's great to be back with you. Thanks.
Absolutely. So that is your message for New York gun owners, huh?
Well, I'll tell you what. When you have both Governor Cuomo in New York and Barack Obama in Washington, D.C., trying to crack down on a fundamental constitutional Second Amendment right, we wanted to send an invitation to the folks up in New York. Are they tired of their governor taking away their Second Amendment rights? Are they tired of being overtaxed? Are they tired of not having an economy that will create jobs? Well, we got a state right for them, and that is the state of Texas. If you are a legal gun owner in New York and don't want to have your location put up on the website, come to the state of Texas. We have our own website that is listed the location of all gun owners in the state of Texas, and it's represented by a red dot. And if you look at our state map, you see the entire state is all red.
That is fantastic. Now, are you hearing from New Yorkers? Is your office hearing from New Yorkers?
Well, I think most people realize this was a little tongue-in-cheek jab at the governor up in New York for crushing their rights. We haven't heard from very many New Yorkers, although on my Facebook site and on my Twitter site, I did see some people saying they were going to try to get out of there as quickly as possible because, listen, people really are threatened by having their constitutional rights infringed and questioned here. Think about this. These people who are gun owners are law-abiding Americans who have they're acting out on a constitutional guarantee. And here we have these politicians trying to exploit a tragedy in a way that is trying to diminish someone's constitutional rights. And so it would be understandable if some people wanted to flee the states that try to restrict those rights.
Talking with Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott. And, General, I know that you may not have had a chance to delve deeply into this 39-page piece of legislation that does not involve your state. But when you hear about these things, like, I don't know, one of the more ridiculous provisions that I've heard is that people who have magazines in New York now that can accept 10 rounds, they're going to be allowed to keep them. They're just told that they're not legally allowed to put more than 7 rounds in them. Now, Governor Cuomo said the reason why we needed this is because, criminals and bad guys are going to get these magazines and use them to inflict all kinds of mayhem. This law, in essence, says trust the gun owners to obey this law. Trust the madmen to obey this law. It's to me, it just seems decidedly unserious given the rhetoric that accompanied this legislation.
Well, it also reminds you of Rahm Emanuel, who said, never let a good crisis go to waste when you're trying to pursue your political agenda. And that's what's going on here. People who are trying to impose these restrictions simply do not get the real facts of what has happened in this world. Remember, it was during the last assault weapon ban that lasted for about 10 years in this country when the Columbine, Colorado shooting took place. But let's look at a city here in Texas, El Paso, Texas. Is one of the safest cities in the country, and we have a concealed handgun law there, so people are walking around El Paso as we speak right now with concealed weapons. But just a few yards away, right across the river, is the city of Juarez, Mexico, which is one of the deadliest cities in the entire world. In Juarez, Mexico, guns are banned. No one can have assault weapons, and it turns out the only people with assault weapons there are the drug cartel members, and they are wreaking murderous havoc because they're shooting people who are otherwise defenseless, but yet that same crime is not taking place in Texas where people are entitled to have guns.
Absolutely. And to me, look, I realize, General Abbott, we live in a country in which there is disagreement as to how important our Constitution should be. I think that's sad. But that is a bigger debate. When we talk about these issues and this gun control legislation, the first place, to me, we have to start as parents, since we're told this should be about protecting our kids and making our kids safe, is actually look at whether or not these laws will do anything to make our kids safer.
Well, even people in Barack Obama's White House administration said that if all of the president's proposals were to be put in place, it would not have prevented the shooting that took place in Connecticut.
Right.
And we've seen that time and again. So this is really nothing more than a political overreaction that doesn't really achieve the goal they are seeking to achieve. But there is that bigger picture issue, though, that you begin to wade into that people need to recognize, and that is that if government can come for your guns that are protected by the constitutional amendment, what other constitutional rights can the government come and take from you?
Absolutely, and that is an issue that, look, clearly this is I think another prong of the attack here. We've seen over the last few years, a lot of folks who love President Obama, who are big supporters of President Obama and his ideology, suggest that the Constitution is outdated. Guys like Ed Schultz recently said on MSNBC it's an archaic document in many ways, and so maybe just ignore it. It's interesting, General Abbott, on Tuesday of this week, I believe it was the anniversary of the enactment of Prohibition, and we didn't just decide, let's just kind of avoid that amendment. Let's just say now it means you can drink. They actually went through the process of repealing the amendment that put prohibition in place. It's striking to me that the gun control advocates don't want to do that because they, at the end of the day, they know they don't have the support of the American people to do so.
As you're going through that, I think you're making a very important underlying point. You have people like Ed Schultz and others who talk about, maybe we shouldn't be living under the same kind of constitution that we have. And it strikes me that the people who are most fearful about guns are those who believe that the Constitution should be flexible and movable. And therefore, they don't really believe in a rigid application of the rules. The people who believe in guns, who have guns, who believe in the Second Amendment rights, are the kind of people who believe in rules and will follow rules, and therefore they prove to be the people who are not dangerous. The people who are pulling the trigger, who walk into a school and shoot a bunch of kids, these aren't law-abiding Americans who believe in Second Amendment rights. These are people who have mental issues, who have other kinds of problems. And our focus needs, if we want to make the world a safer place, if we want to make schools safer, our focus needs to be on addressing what the real problems are, not the imaginary problems.
Absolutely. I mean, I recall a study that was done in Texas not long ago, a few years ago now, I guess, that determined that right-to-carry holders are more law-abiding than the general population.
That's right. Listen, we've been down this debate before. When we passed our concealed handgun law, all the naysayers came out and said, well, it's going to be like the OK Corral here in the state of Texas. There'll be shootouts all over the place, and lives will be endangered. Nothing like that has happened at all since the concealed handgun law was passed in the state of Texas. Texas is a safer place, and I think the same would be true across the country. In fact, again, going back, it was Rahm Emanuel earlier this week who was on national TV bragging about the fact that in Chicago they've confiscated more guns than any other major city. And, of course, Chicago is a city that has some of the most stringent gun laws of any city in the nation. And despite those two facts, Chicago remains one of the most dangerous cities in the country. So Rahm Emanuel and the city of Chicago themselves prove that gun restrictions are having no effect. It's only the outlaws who are misusing the guns over there.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting you bring up Mayor Emanuel. There's a reporter for the website BuzzFeed who's out with a story today about Mayor Emanuel during an interview back in 2010 getting rather physical with this reporter. And the reporter says, I've interviewed guys who are angry and upset before, but I've never felt threatened like I felt threatened by Mayor Rahm Emanuel. You kind of wonder, General Abbott, if maybe one of the reasons why Rahm Emanuel says that we can't be trusted with guns is because he feels like he can't be trusted with one.
Well, I got to tell you, it's also frustrating for a lot of Americans that there seems to be a divide, if you would, about who's going to be allowed to have guns and who's not. It seems like it's just the monarchs who are entitled to have guns and the peasants are not. If you are wealthy, if you're in power, then you're allowed to have guns. But if you're not wealthy and if you're not in power, you're not supposed to have guns. That is contradictory to what this country is all about. And, in fact, it's those kinds of divisions that led to the uprising that eventually led to the Declaration of Independence in this country in the first place. And so I think Americans need to sit back, rethink this, reevaluate what has made this country great, the foundational doctrines upon which this country was based. And we need to get back to those fundamental principles. When we do that, America will continue to elevate itself in the premier position in the entire world.
Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott, thank you so much for your time, sir, and look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Have a great weekend.
You too.